Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another speed build for the Disney Save. Today we are going to be working on a Lion King themed community lot, and this is a spa. The first one for the Disney Save called Feel the Love Tonight. It is of course inspired by and based off of the scene by the same music number, with some minor references to that because it is a scene that takes place in like the dense jungle and is not very long upon rewatching it, trying to pull out some details, some things that I could put into the scenery that kind of represent the scene. There wasn't a ton to go off of, but because this scene takes place in the same jungle that Simba meets Timon and Pumbaa, and because Timon and Pumbaa really represent those Zen characters that help Simba learn how to make peace with being himself and finding peace, and like those characters are really big on relaxation. And I also gave both of them aspirations that we got from the little spa day revamp. They added a couple of new aspirations that have to do with like finding your inner peace and becoming more zen, and they're spa related aspirations. So it just made sense to finally add a spa into the save. And I've been looking for a reason to do this, but I think it doesn't really, it's one of those ones that's a little bit tougher to utilize because it's not going to be super commonly shown one for one in a Disney film. And then there are just a lot of ideas that you can maybe interpret into this, but we haven't gotten around to those movies yet. The Lion King is one of the first ones that I felt like just definitely had to have it. And then also when I was planning Oasis Springs, if you guys have noticed so far, I really wanted to include as many community lots as possible. Like ideally almost one of every version that's available in the game, within reason, like things that are going to make sense for the movies and the world here, not just like everything. There are some that come from university and some that come from the high school years pack that are very specific and just wouldn't have worked for this world. But I want to say, with the exception of possibly those ones that come from like university and stuff, and I think a lounge and a library, I used all of the community lot types in this world. I think there's a community space, a pool, there's a tiny home, there is a restaurant coming later on in my Lion King videos. I'll spoil that now. I did a nightclub, I did 2 bars for Bug's Life, I did a couple of rentals for this world, and I also did a park, a national park, over in my Aladdin stuff. So we've got a lot going on in this world. A spa is definitely needed, and there is a lot of water in particular going on for today's build. In the last one I mentioned that I wanted to make the watering hole, but I didn't want it to be too many water activities. I didn't want it to be like this sprawling waterfalls and ponds and all sorts of things, and that's because I was saving that for here. As you can see, I have a lot of layers of water going on, and actually the idea was to use pretty much every type that the game currently has to offer. So that being an above ground pool, an underground pool, or like in the ground pool, a pond, a sauna, a hot tub, and I think that's it. And then I'm gonna like adorn it with lots of plants, lots of little waterfalls and things. That waterfall that comes from Sulani that does work and animate in live mode, and those little rocks that have the waters attached to them from the new patio pack. That way your Sims can swim, your Sims can play in the water in the little pond area, and I believe you can look for frogs whenever there is a pond drawn. You also can go sit in the hot springs and relax, which is obviously very in theme with the whole spa idea. There are 2 different hot tubs. That hot tub specifically, I know I've been kind of like overusing it for this world. I put it over on the Aladdin pool lot as well, but it just works really well for these outdoorsy, natural looking rock structure builds, especially when I want something that is modern like a hot tub, but you don't want to actually utilize the really sleek, modern looking hot tubs. This one is absolutely perfect. It's one of the newer ones that we have received. And then of course your Sims can actually go swimming in the pool. The purpose of doing the 2 different types of pools is mostly because I never really get the opportunity to do too many above ground pools. It just doesn't come up very often. But then I also had that waterfall that is from Sulani, and the water has to be coming from somewhere. So it's supposed to be flowing down from that pool that's a little bit higher up and then flowing down into the lower pool. I really wanted to make sure we had that waterfall in this build specifically because it is one of the few references to the scene from the movie. There's only a couple of things that I could really pull out. One of them being the waterfall that they walk underneath. One of them is the log that they go across, and there's like these stepping stones that they go across in the water. They also both go in the water in that scene, and Simba drags Nala into the water and they swim around for a second, so it's kind of like paying tribute to that in a way as well. I leaned a little little bit more into the jungle adventure plants and the jungle vibe as well for the build, whereas for a lot of the other greenery on the other Lion King lots, I've been staying kind of away from the jungle specific greenery, but here it definitely makes sense because we're in a different location essentially. And I also used some plants from Tomi, which has that jungle look as well. I believe it is like a jungle world. It's just a little bit more industrialized compared to the jungle adventure world, Selvadorada. That above ground pool actually has some of these like rock stones in it that make the water bubble. So it physically looks different as well. It looks like a little boiling pool of water. And there is a specific scene that I think I'm remembering from the Lion King 1.5. And I know I said I wasn't really going to be referencing that in the builds and in the characters, and I'm definitely not as of right now, but I can recall, I think it's from that movie, Timon and Pumbaa sitting in like a hot tub or a boiling pool of water, relaxing and getting into the story of telling like their portion of the Lion King 1.5. So that's kind of in reference to that. Additionally, my husband has been having this idea for a very long time. This is one of those ones from the archives that I wrote down somewhere here and there on little post-it notes, and you should see the desktop screen on my computer. I have notes upon notes and lists upon lists of things to add to the save, things to change from the save, scheduling things, all sorts of stuff that helps me get by. But one of those things that he had brought up is that I should do a Lion King pool, and it just made so much sense. It was a really great idea, one that I could possibly utilize as like a filler in a future world, like if we redo Selvadorada. I do plan to redo that world. I just think there's so many movies and things that could go in there, and then if I already got to the Lion King here, I might not focus on it so much there, but it is a jungle world, and we have a location in Lion King that is based on jungle scenes. It's very Timon and Pumbaa, so I could do a pool over there. But the reason I didn't do a pool in Oasis Springs is because we already have one with Aladdin, and it's already an outdoorsy kind of pool, so it didn't really make sense to do two, especially when the theming was similar enough. But we have the pool here anyway, so you could change this lot over to be another pool if you wanted it to instead of a spa. I don't foresee too many people wanting to do that, but you could. One thing that I did a little bit different about this lot in comparison to all the other Lion King ones so far, I've really been trying to stay away from the modern structures, and I didn't want huts or buildings, so whenever I needed to make an indoor space, it's been relegated to be a cave. And for this one, I didn't want to do that. I think the idea was done, and I was happy with it on the other lots, and I've done it a couple of times, but for the opportunity to not be too repetitive and give you guys something new, I decided if we were going to do like an actual structure, this is the lot that's going to utilize one. There are some more modern looking things that go in the spa lot type that I would rather hide away in something that is like aesthetically similar and slightly more modern leaning, but it's okay in this instance. I think that this is like where I start to come out of the less modern vibes and start to be okay with it. You can't really hide the massage chairs. There's pretty much no way to do that. Massage chairs, the actual massage tables, you need a bathroom in here, you need storage and lockers for your Sims to put clothes and get changed into, so you have to have an indoor structure. Other than that, I would have been doing a ton of rock work to try to hide some stuff in some more caves, and I think it would have made the build look really bulky in a way that I was not going to be happy with. So I'm starting to lean from this video on out into the more, I would say, Animal Kingdom Lodge, clean, beautiful, high-end spa aesthetic that is very much depicted in like Animal Kingdom and in Disney World specifically. I have never had the pleasure of staying at Animal Kingdom Lodge. It is very high up there on my list of future wishes and goals when I do a future trip to Disney World, if I ever get the opportunity to stay there even for a little bit. But I've seen lots and lots of photos of the place, and it has this certain look to it that's very much based on the Lion King, and there's little pieces of the Lion King and Africa specifically in the architecture, but it is modern, sleek, beautiful, high-end, and that's kind of what I decided we were going to go with for the interior of this building in particular. Especially because if you think about a place like this in real life, showing up here, this would just be the most gorgeous. I would be so excited to stay here and go lay in the hot tubs and go walk in the different bodies of water, like go in the little heated pool and get out and swim in the big unheated pool and cool down and lay under the waterfall and sit in the lower pond areas. It would just be so fun, and I would picture it to be very high-end, very expensive. It was also an exciting change of pace. I can start using some of that stuff in the catalog that I've been avoiding a little bit. One of those things being, believe it or not, potted potted plants. I felt like potted plants were just a little bit too much of like even a modern thing for Lion King. So I've been ignoring the potted plants or like trying to hide the pots for the most part. You won't really find any on the Pride Rock build at all except for Timon and Pumbaa's room. And I don't think I did any at the watering hole either. So I was able to use some in here. I've been using bamboo as well. Bamboo is shown in the Lion King a few times in the jungle areas. So I know it seems a little out of place, but it's not. So the interior is very clean looking. I ended up using these really cool open windows. I think they might be from Eco Lifestyle that don't fit on the round walls. And you can see I had to use tool to morph them into the curved parts of the walls. We don't have a lot of curved windows, to be honest. It's actually annoying because they added curved walls into the game and then said over time we would be getting more doors and windows that fit on the curve, only to not really ever get them, which is kind of frustrating. So you can use tool to morph them into the wall and they will cut the wall open so you can actually use that as a window. It'll work as a window, but it doesn't give that black texture that sometimes overrides the windows if they're not sitting correctly on the grid, if that makes sense. It's not perfect. It doesn't have the right curve to it, but it at least gives the openness and the window effect that you really need for a building like this, where I don't have many tiles that are on the curve, so it would have looked a little bit funny without the additional windows. This build also reminded me of how we once received a pack refresh for the Sims 4 Spa Day that desperately needed it, by the way, because this pack is so old. I have never used spas, but the stuff that they added in terms of clutter, the additional aspirations, the additional furniture items, the revamp in general was very good and very, very well received. And people were so excited about the idea of the Sims 4 pack revamps, especially for those older packs. Like Outdoor Retreat desperately needs it. There are others that desperately need it as well. Dine Out needs it just because of the fact that it doesn't work all that well. It was such an exciting time in The Sims 4 because it seemed like they were going to go back and fix some of these things that don't work as well or aren't as well executed as some of the newer packs really have been. Like Life and Death has been very, very well received and really great. Cottage Living was really good. There are others that have been more controversial in between, but regardless, we haven't gotten a pack revamp since they said that they were going to be doing them, and this is the only one we ever got. We got some new items with it, and I used them in this build. They really helped in terms of like building today. People have brought this up before. I'm definitely not the first person to notice this. It just made me personally think about it and kind of chuckle to myself because we do need more pack refreshes, and we kind of let them get away with that one, even though we shouldn't have. I blended in the lot with some similar trees. You can see the palm trees kind of around in this area. There were a lot of them, so I wanted to pull some of them into the lot so it made it look clean and like it really fits here aesthetically. And then I've also been utilizing that one particular tree. I do not know what kind of tree that is, but it to me at least gave similar enough to an African tree that I think a lot of us would think of, like those taller ones that giraffes in particular are often seen near or eating out of. That was the only one in the catalog that I found that I felt like was the closest, so I've been using that across the Lion King builds, and I made sure to use all similar trees, things like that, to tie all the builds together. I didn't really use it actually when I did the first Pride Rock video for you guys. You didn't see that tree at all on that lot, but I went back and added it later once I kind of figured out my core little group of plants here. And I know that was a quick one, but that's kind of it. It's a tiny little spot. It came out so cute. I'm very, very excited about this lot. It's probably my favorite of the Lion King builds, but there are a couple more to come. The next one up is going to be Rafiki's Residential. It's a tree house, and I'm also going to be including Rafiki's Create a Sim in that video just for the sake of keeping it all nice and clean together for you guys. It was a little bit shorter video, so just combine those two. And then I have two more commercial Lion King lots for this neighborhood and one more that actually goes in the commercial strip. That's our last few couple of lots for Oasis Springs, so stay tuned for all of that. And if you'd like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box down below or the one at the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and I will talk to you all in the next one.